Hey everyone, my name's Stacey and welcome back to Fibro After Dark. I hope you're all doing as well as you can be. I have to tell you about this week's skin drama. It has been one of those weeks where I've just looked in the mirror and just thought, seriously, are you actually taking the mick right now? Like, can my body just give me a break? Because if having a chronic illness wasn't enough, this week my skin has just decided to join in as well. And I've had these really, really painful spots. And they're not little ones that kind of come overnight and disappear within a couple of days. They're ones that just seem to take forever to go away. And they're just so painful. I can actually feel them when I'm sleeping, when I put my head on the pillow and I can just feel them. And they're just there. So I thought, today, let's be honest and let's talk about how chronic illness affects our skin. Because when your body's already hurting and you've got brain fog and you're fatigued and you're just trying to get through every single day, when looking in the mirror and seeing just another thing to deal with just seems incredibly unfair. And it's almost like your body's saying, oh, hi, you having a nice week? Have some painful spots. So I wondered, is there a connection between chronic illness and your skin? That's what I've been researching this week. Am I just really unlucky and going through a second teenage skin period? Or is there actually a connection? I've spoken to people this week who not only suffer with chronic illness, but also dermatologists as well, to find out whether the painful spots, the rashes and just this uneven skin, the breakouts and just skin that suddenly reacts to products that I've been using for years and now they're not fine. My usual little disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a dermatologist. I'm not here to diagnose anybody or tell you what treatment you should have. I'm simply somebody who's living with a chronic illness. He's become incredibly curious about why our bodies seem to do the strange things they do. And if I can learn something that helps somebody else a little bit along the way, then to be honest, this podcast has done its job. I got a little bit hung up this past week because I lost a lot of followers and subscribers and I was like, everyone really hates me. But then I actually just remembered why I was doing it and I wasn't doing it for the masses. I was just doing it for that small amount of us that would just get it. So let's get into it. One of the hardest things about living with chronic illness is just sometimes you just don't know what's connected and what's just normal. It could be that you've got a headache and you think, would I have a headache anyway? Or is it my condition? If I wake up feeling anxious, if I wake up feeling tired, is it because I am tired? Or is it because of my condition? Or is it completely unrelated? And skin has been very much in that category for me. So over the past couple of years, I have started getting these really, really painful breakouts. And I just think, obviously, I'm just having a really bad skin week. But when I started reading more about the connection, if you've ever Googled, does my fibromyalgia cause spots? The answer is actually no. But when we delve deeper into this, we actually find out that living with a chronic illness is a perfect environment for your skin to become really unhappy. And once I read that, once I started delving deeper into it, I found that it did make a lot more sense to me. Because when we think about our bodies and we think about everything that they're juggling every single day, think of it as spinning plates. So everybody has so many plates to juggle and our body's the same. In our lives, we might have work, we might have family, we might have friends, running a house, laundry. They're all plates that we are spinning all the time. And then when we apply that theory to our bodies are actually spinning those plates as well. So we've got things like poor sleep, constant pain, the stress, the medication as well that's supposed to help all these things, the hormonal changes, and overall our nervous system is just constantly working overtime. So that's a lot of plates. So why wouldn't it be reacting to all these things as well? Why wouldn't that be another plate that your body is trying to spin? And I think sometimes we almost try to separate it. My skin's having a bad week, but actually it's a reflection of what your body's going through. And maybe your whole body is having a bad week and your skin is just simply joining in on the party. One of the biggest things that I found when I was researching this is that it comes back to something that we have spoken about before on the podcast. It comes back to our nervous system. If we think of your nervous system a bit like a house alarm, okay, so stick with me on this one. So normally, if somebody breaks in, that alarm will go off exactly as it should. That's what it's designed to do. But with chronic illness, it's almost as though somebody has turned the sensitivity of that alarm right up. So instead of that alarm going off because somebody's opened the door, it starts going off because a leaf's landed on the doorstep. It becomes really overreactive. If we apply this theory to our body and how everything just feels so much bigger than it should, our pain, our temperature, our touch, brain fog, massive thing. And that's why some days, to me personally, even wearing clothes is completely unbearable. It just feels like everything is just so painful, and taking a warm shower sometimes just feels like little darts of needles are just hitting me constantly. Because our skin is made up of nerve endings, it makes sense that our skin can sometimes feel different too. Another example of this is when I put a moisturizer on that I've used for years and years, and suddenly it starts really burning and it's really stinging. It's nothing different in the product. I've always used this product. You start thinking, why does this feel so painful? For a long time, I thought it was just me, but now because of my condition, I realize that it wasn't. There's also stress. Stress doesn't just affect our minds. It affects every single part of our body. When we're stressed, our bodies release a hormone called cortisol. It is often referred to as the stress hormone. Now, cortisol isn't the enemy. We actually need it in our bodies. It helps us to wake up. It helps us to respond to situations, and it keeps us functioning. But the problem comes when our bodies are producing higher levels of cortisol for weeks on end, such as chronic illness, where that can even span into years. And even if you're coping brilliantly, there is still that background stress that you probably don't even acknowledge. The constant appointments, the pain, the fatigue, the financial risk. And it comes back to those spinning those plates that you're trying to spin all the time. And your body never really gets a break from that, either externally spinning plates or internally spinning plates. And what happens is then our bodies go into overdrive on producing cortisol. And what happens as a byproduct of that is that it increases the oil production in our skin, which then can increase the inflammation. It can slow down healing, which means that my horrible, deep, painful spots become even more angrier. They become even more painful, and they hang around for a lot longer than I would like. And every breakout that I've had, it has come around the same time as a flare-up. And I just don't think it's a coincidence anymore. I actually used to think that I was getting the painful spots because during a flare-up, I am bedbound. And when I'm bedbound, my face is against a pillow the whole time. I used to think, well, my skin's not breathing because I'm just constantly lying on a pillow. And that's what I used to put it down to. However, now by actually looking deeper into the subject, I realize it is because when I am in a flare, my body is producing a lot more cortisol because I'm stressed. My body is stressed physically. I'm stressed mentally. And that then is going to produce more oil. And it's that vicious circle. It's another plate to spin. It's something else that's going on. And instead of getting frustrated with it and thinking, oh, well, I shouldn't stay on this side so much. I should try and move to this side, then I won't get so many spots. Or maybe I should try this really expensive pillowcase. I should have actually been thinking, is this connected? What else I found quite interesting this week when I was doing my research was the importance of sleep, or more accurately, the lack of sleep. With chronic illness, I genuinely don't remember the last time that I woke up feeling refreshed. It's something that I actually fantasize about in the day. I daydream about how I used to feel, how I used to be up early. I'd go to the gym, I'd come back, have a shower, go to work, come back, go see a friend. My days were so busy. It is now something that I fantasize about because I would get a full night's sleep. And even if I say, right, I'm going to go and get an early night, it doesn't even mean that just because I'm in bed at 9 o'clock, I'm going to be going to sleep. The pain keeps me awake so much, and my legs always decide that they want to have a party as soon as I lie down and turn the lights off. And then my brain suddenly thinks, oh, this is brilliant. This is a perfect time to remember something embarrassing I did in 1999. And then all those things just roll into hours. Before I know it, my alarm clock's going off and my body just decides, I've had enough. I've not had any sleep. And what I didn't realize is that our skin relies so much on restorative sleep. It's something that I touched upon in a previous episode, because with restorative sleep, your body goes into repair mode. And what's important for our topic is when it's in that mode, it starts producing collagen and starts repairing tiny bits of damage from the day before. It will help to reduce the inflammation. It will help to build new skin cells. And it's almost like our skin does a whole night shift while we're sleeping. So without that sleep, we aren't getting all those benefits, because if we're not sleeping properly, that night shift never really gets a chance to do any real work, which means our skin will take longer to heal. Our complexion can look really dull no matter how amount of vitamin C and hyaluronic acid you throw at it. The dark circles will become darker and everything overall just looks tired. And I remember looking in the mirror this week thinking, I don't even recognize myself today. And it's not just because of the spots, but because I just look exhausted. I've not even been bothered to do a full face of makeup. And there's the inflammation. Everything just hurts, which brings us on to inflammation as well. Inflammation is really, really interesting. Some chronic illnesses aren't directly linked to causing inflammation, but researchers do think that there are low-level inflammatory responses happening in people with chronic illness. And even if the condition itself isn't necessarily causing the inflammation in the skin, it's putting our bodies under that constant physical stress. So we're coming back to the plate theory, where we're spinning sleep, the stress, hormones, medication, and spinning all these plates. It really is no wonder that our skin sometimes struggles to keep up. And then if we add in a busy week, not drinking enough water, all these things again are adding extra plates. And then what happens is that you're going to drop a plate. You can't spin that many. And sometimes when you drop a plate, it's going to cause a migraine. It's going to cause a flare up. It's going to be, 3 days in bed. And I know some of you are probably thinking, okay, great, Stace, but what's the answer? I still can't sleep. And that's exactly where my brain went at 2 o'clock in the morning. Because when I get one of these horrible, deep, painful spots, my first thinking is to throw everything I've got at it. I'll wash my face constantly. I'm throwing retinoid at it. I even tried toothpaste this week. So I remember, I don't know if it's an old wife tale. Let me know in the comments, has anybody actually had any relief from toothpaste? The last thing that I do is actually leave it alone. I'm constantly touching it through the day. I'm like, is it still there? Yeah, it's still there. Does it still hurt? Yeah, it still hurts. And what happens then is I'm just causing it to become more inflamed and more angry, because I'm constantly touching it and poking it. I'm throwing every kind of chemical I can at it, and it's just making it angrier. So one thing that can actually help is something really, really simple. A warm compress. Hold the warm compress 10, 15 minutes, a few times a day. It's not glamorous. It's not expensive, but it can help to encourage some of the skin cells in that area to start renewing, rather than forcing it with lots and lots of chemicals. When you've got those really deep, painful spots, the best thing you can do is nothing. Don't start buying every product. You could use a gentle cleanser, a really simple moisturizer, your usual SPF in the day, and then just leave it. Nothing too harsh, nothing that's going to strip my skin like my retinoids, because my body's already overwhelmed. So why am I trying to overload my skin as well? And there's another thing as well. If I keep poking it and picking it, all that's going to happen is I'm going to scar my face. You can speak to your GP. There are prescription medications available as well that can make a huge difference. I think sometimes we just get so used to living with symptoms that we forget that we don't have to accept every single one. I think the hardest part for me this week hadn't been spots themselves, but my confidence that I tie to my skin. And I know that sounds really vain, but the problem is that when I've got these deep, painful spots and I can feel them throbbing, all I feel is everybody's looking at them. And when you have a chronic illness, your confidence is kind of already rock bottom anyway, because you're always having to cancel plans. You're tired all the time, and you're already grieving a former version of yourself. And then when you just look in the mirror and your skin's just joining in on hating you, it's another reminder, it's a visual reminder that something else has changed. And it comes back to my continuing theme of why are we so hard on ourselves? Why don't we treat ourselves with the compassion that we treat other people with? You know, why are we always our hardest critic? If my friend came over tomorrow and she had some of these deep, painful spots, I'd be so busy chatting away, I wouldn't notice. But we're just so hard on ourselves. And I think maybe we should just be looking into the mirror sometimes, and instead of going, oh, what's that? We should start asking ourselves, what's my body been through this week? Because sometimes our skin isn't the problem. It's just simply telling the story of everything else that our body's been going through, which then brings me to this week's thought. Your body isn't trying to punish you. It's just trying to communicate with you. And sometimes it speaks through the pain. Sometimes it's speaking through the fatigue, through the brain fog. And sometimes, unfortunately, it speaks through your skin. And maybe instead of getting angry with it, we should become curious about it, because curiosity is far kinder than criticism. And we should just start thinking, okay, well, what have I done this week to cause that increase of cortisol, to cause that increase of oil production, to cause these very painful spots? And what can we learn from that? Maybe we should have slowed down when we shouldn't. Maybe we shouldn't have rushed around and thrown an extra plate into our day to spin. Before I finish, I wanted to tell you about something that I'm really excited to start here on Fibro After Dark. When I initially started this podcast, I wanted to make sure that we're tapping into the conversations that not everybody has, and to try and widen that support network a little bit as well. So the After Dark episodes aren't going to be educational episodes. They're not going to be me talking to you about what I've been obsessively reading about this past week. You know, they're just going to be a lot more quieter, a lot more personal. This first week on After Dark, I have asked my partner 10 questions. I'm quite nervous about this, not going to lie. So I've asked him 10 questions about what it's like loving somebody who has a chronic illness. And it's not to catch him out. It's not to make him feel uncomfortable at all. It's just honest questions that we don't ask each other, that we don't sometimes consider. I'll just be reading his answers for the very first time, and I genuinely have no idea what he's written, so it's a little bit nerve-wracking. And what I'll do is I'll put the questions that I've asked into the show notes, so then you can ask them to your partner or to your friends, to your family, and just see where the conversation takes you, because sometimes understanding doesn't begin with advice. It begins with simply asking the question. So I hope you'll join me this week for the After Dark episode. Thank you so much for spending the time with me today. As always, please remember to hit subscribe. Remember that our bodies are incredibly complex, and sometimes they're frustrating, sometimes they're confusing. But they're also working incredibly hard every single second of the day. So if your skin's having a bad week, please don't be too hard on yourself. It doesn't define who you are. It's a spot. You know, you are so much more than the reflection in the mirror. So take care of yourselves, be kind to your body, be kind to your skin, and remember you never have to face chronic illness alone. So I'll see you later on in this week. Please hit subscribe. I will really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Take care.